It's still 10:10. It's in the evening. It's 9:40. I just got home. It was the first time that I walked at night in the city. I mean, for me, this is late because I'm usually home by this time. But this is the first time that I was like walking the streets by myself. I went to have dinner with my cousin, the late dinner, and coincidentally, we so she reached out and she said, hey, she reached out for another reason, but in that reasoning, she said, hey, you want to go have dinner later today? I said, sure. What do you want to eat? She said, ramen. I was like, sure. So we went to the same place that we ate when I first moved in. The video that posted today is the first video that I'm recording about being here in San Francisco. And I'm talking about how we went to go have ramen. And how, you know, we're talking about the side of the family, this particular side of the family, and the intergenerational trauma that's being broken. So she came over and we had tea and we're just catching up because we hadn't seen each other in a while before we go have ramen. And we're talking about the side of the family, right? But we're talking about, so one, I'm tripped out that, again, I continue to be tripped out of this repeated theme of when a video posts and then there's something that's similarly being presented in my real time. So there's that. And we're talking about this side of the family. Continue to talk because we're from that side of the family. Unfortunately, we received news that one of my uncles was found dead. And so we're processing that, we're talking about that, and then the conversation comes up about how there's like paranoia that he was presented with and against the government and there was this claim that he had apparently, I mean, I wasn't really close with this uncle, but apparently there was this claim about like evil spirits being involved. And, you know, in this particular, in both sides of my family, religion is a big construct and a huge impact in how people live their lives. And so one thing led to another, and we were talking about spirits, and then I shared with her, I said, you know, in our family, from the stories that people have shared with me, and the stories that I've heard other people share about other people, we have a very strong psychic ability. Whether or not we tap into it is to each their own, right? But it's interesting as to how it will continue to manifest if it's not tapped into, right? Or it's, yeah, like, you know, she shared how her mom actually had dreams a whole week before the death of this individual, of my uncle, and her wanting to visit him. My older uncle, from what I'm being told, he was having distressing dreams possibly, or I mean, he was emotional, extra emotional the week before of the passing. And again, so there's this, you know, intuitive, emotionally driven intuition about something occurring. And there was this feeling something's going to happen. Sure enough, that's what happened, right? And I was explaining to my cousin that I believe in our particular family, it's strong because of the intergenerational trauma that exists. And I've mentioned it before that with trauma, your senses are heightened. Your senses are just heightened with trauma. because your body is trying to protect itself, right? From danger, from harm. And so the senses become heightened to pick up any type of little signal that might indicate being in harm's way. So it only makes sense that when you're through that process of a heightened senses, that other senses are going to be heightened as well, right? And is it possible that this additional sense is also heightened? And so when you have someone who's experiencing trauma after trauma after trauma, is it possible, one, is it highlighted in their chart, one, that they're going to experience this trauma? And two, is there a pattern? Like I wonder, and I've mentioned this before, I wonder if we did the birth charts of everyone who's experienced some type of trauma, will it be something similar, right? So there's that component of it. And or are we all just crazy? Right? And you know, people, when they hear the word crazy, they take offense to it. They take offense to it mostly because of the reflection, one, their perception of this word, what this means, right? And then again, the reflection of it back towards them, right? For me personally, I embrace all types of craziness. Right? I like to keep things fun. I like to keep things entertaining. So in essence, there's a little bit of wackiness, right? In terms of how I live my life, in terms of how I choose to view my life. But then there's, you know, the mental health piece of it, where people, I mean, I work in mental health, and I know that there are people who struggle with that term, right? Because of how it's been used in the past. I just view it as how I view it, right? And so it's no offense to anybody else, but I'm also not going to tailor everything to meet other people's needs. If anything, if it bothers someone, it's something that they need to work on within themselves, of their perception of that term and how it reflects on them. So anyways, so again, it just speaks to perception, right? So trauma, I've mentioned it before, how mothers have a heightened intuitive sense when it comes to their children, right? A heightened intuitive sense when it comes to their children's needs. And really believing that it's because of the traumatic impact that they had at childbirth that there has to be a connection there, right? Not to mention the obvious fact that they're the womb, right? The vessel for this creation. And so it only makes sense for them to have this intuitive connection to this living being that they created. And so then, if we keep that in mind, that perspective, that symbolic experience of a mother, of the creator, right? Part creator, mother, and their child, right? This intuitive connection, even though it's not them, but they're in essence a portion of this child. A part of this child is a part of this parent, right? Then it's only fair to say that it's the same thing with our own creator, however we choose to believe it. And so then, if we choose to believe that it's a similar connection to a creator, to our creator, a creator, then wouldn't there be an intuitive connection as well, right? That makes sense. And so then, tapping into it, right? In the silence, through meditation, through prayer, through any one of those means, to know, to be guided, to be led down the path that we're supposed to go. So anyways, that's what happened today. That's what happened today. This evening, we had a great conversation about the spoken word. I told her that I submitted my poems. She wants to read my poems. Well, I offered them to her, really. In which she said yes, and we were just talking about the ripple effect, really. And then I was sharing with her my recent dreams, and I know she has dreams too, and she's like, I need to look into that. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should, right? Maybe it'll be helpful. And I'm telling her, I'm like, I'm paying more attention to them, and I'm learning how to read them for myself, my own guidance, really. So there's that. There's that. And we were talking about death and my dad's reaction, and how I was just comforting him and trying to ground him, really, bring him back to the present. Because, you know, when there's a loss and you have a strong connection to someone, and, you know, based on your beliefs too, like I mentioned, there's a strong religious belief about the end being the end. You know, when someone ends their life cycle, it's the end. And I was explaining to my cousin, I'm like, I don't believe that anymore. One of their concerns was that they hope he's at peace. And I said, of course he's at peace. You know, his life cycle ended. If anything, he's more at peace now without the meat suit, without the limitations. And so he's more at peace now than he ever was. And if anything, he's just, in my mind, he's preparing to come back, just in a different meat suit. She's like, no, that's really helpful, a helpful way to look at it. And I'm like, but a lot of people in our family don't look at it that way. They think it's the end, and there's grief and loss as to how the end occurred for him. And, you know, with all his mental illness and just the speculated mental illness, because he was afraid of doctors and the government, like, he really went off the grid. And so there's just speculation as to his cognitive abilities and status. And which is interesting, because the last few interactions that I had with him, there was no indication. Like, there wasn't an indication of his thought process being off the chart. But I didn't interact with him on a consistent basis like my other loved ones. But anyways. So there's this belief, right? There's this worry that people could have done more. Woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? Even my loved one my cousin was saying, you know, that they were very, like, there was a sense of guilt. Like, I should have spent more time with him. I'm like, I was telling them, I was like, you know, things unfolded exactly as they needed to. And, you know, his end of life was as it needed to be. And you know, we just need to remember that, or else we get stuck in this pattern of guilt and hurt and pain, and just, you know, the importance of just accepting what is as is. And there's hope in knowing that he's gonna come back. He'll be back. He's just in a different meat suit. And he'll be ready to learn the next lesson. So it's comforting for me in these newfound beliefs that I have. And, you know, just not fearing that part of my life anymore. And it feels good. It feels aligned. If anything, it just feels aligned for me. And it's funny because we were also talking about the impact of the Catholic Church, and just because tomorrow is October 11th. It's, you know, for some people it used to be called Columbus Day, and now it's Indigenous Peoples Day. So there's this continued theme about church, right? Religion. And I guess recently there's been some issues with, like, there was this protest, I guess, and against the Catholic faith, and I was explaining to my cousin, and I was like, you know, how important, one, our words are when it comes to speaking about faith. And then giving her my experience about, you know, how there were people within my extended circle, right, and immediate circle, who had come to me in my face were telling me that I was going the wrong way. And telling her that these people were saying it out of love, out of concern, genuine concern, and trying to get them to understand that this protesting that was coming from years ago, right? I'm like, if we put ourselves in their shoes, and I told them, I'm like, I'm gonna play the devil's advocate. If we put ourselves in their shoes in that time period, they truly believed that they were doing the right thing. And they truly believed that they were wanting to save people. And you know, and it's funny because my cousin shared that as they were in front of this church, it happened to be during a Spanish Mass. And they're protesting because I guess there were some other indigenous people, 5 women who, I think like they did something to one of the statues in front of a church. I don't know where exactly. I don't follow the news. And so they're being prosecuted as, because the Catholic Church, I guess, is wanting them to get the full sentence of a hate crime. And so the Catholic Church is wanting to prosecute. And so, you know, and she's explaining to me, you know, where all of this is coming from. I'm just like, no, I totally get it. It makes sense. I don't think the Catholic Church initially, you know, back then had that intention. But unfortunately, that's the reality of how things unfolded. And you have pockets of indigenous people who became exterminated, really extinct, because of the practices that was inflicted on them during that time period. And it's just unfortunate that that was the reality of how things unfolded. And then I said, wouldn't it be great if the Catholic Church just owned it, right? I'm like, that, because at the bottom line of it all, at the end of the day, all of us are just wanting to be seen, are just wanting to be heard, are just wanting to be acknowledged and respected. I said that's what people are seeking. And so when we have these experiences, these cultural experiences from our past, and we're bringing that to the present moment, it's because of the hurt. It's because of what we see back then that in that time period was acceptable. But for us now, it's like, how could they? How could they create such harm towards these people, right? And it's unfathomable, and it triggers within us old wounds, right? Could be generational trauma wounds, right? The sense of identity being lost through that process, right? And so I said, it's just a reflection of our wounds. And so I said, wouldn't it be great if the Catholic Church just owned it, right? Publicly owned it, that this is what they did. Even though in that moment, they thought they were doing the right thing without realizing the ripple effect of their actions, right? And that unfortunately through this process, pockets of indigenous people became extinct. And or impacted, and or, you know, traditions were altered, right? And so wouldn't it be great if they just owned it? Public statement, we own, right? And it's not even them as individuals, it's people from their past, right? They themselves are a product of being brought up in this system that we as society have created. And so she's like, yeah, it'd be great. Exactly, right? That's all that people want, is this acknowledgement that what was done in the past occurred for a reason, but an apology of like, we didn't realize that this was going to happen, right? Because it really didn't. Excuse me. In that time period, that's what they truly believed needed to be done. Same thing, and I brought it up to her. I'm like, it's same thing with slavery. Same thing with slavery. I was just like, it unfolded in the way that it did. It doesn't make it right or wrong. It just, that's how it unfolded. And there's pain brought up about that because of the ripple effect of it, right? And so, you know, people often ask and question God, the universe. Why did this happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? Right? And again, it goes back to, it's a matter of perspective. It's how you choose to look at your situation. And some people, it's easier to pick up, and for others, it's just drowned out. It's drowned out. And that's how we end up with this push and pull, right? Love and hate type of dynamic, this polarized view of the world and each other. And it just continues to stress the importance of how we influence each other, how we impact each other with our words, with our actions, with our sheer presence, with our sheer presence. Because these actions of what we were talking about today, it's not even actions that are occurring now. These were actions taken by people from the past. And the energetic imprint that it's left over the years, and how it's still wounds that have yet to be healed. It's October 10 at 10 p.m. 10. That's all that was triggered today. I guess we'll see what tomorrow holds. Continues to be interesting here in San Francisco. So we'll see. I'm gonna help my dad and with this loss and just coordinate. And I was planning on going home anyways in a week, so we'll see if they'll have a ceremony and see what I can do to help support my dad. But isn't that amazing? The ripple effect. The ripple effect. How we impact each other. My name is Yubi, and in case you haven't figured it out, this footage is capturing my experience as I learn to navigate my personal spiritual awakening. I am learning that this experience is unique to each one of us. In whatever way we believe we are embracing living our truth, this just happens to be my journey. And despite me having a graduate degree and a license in clinical social work, this by no means is intended to replace any type of mental health advice. This is just me on a personal level, documenting my experience, shedding light on the truth that I am learning and discovering for myself, and really inviting you along for the ride. If by some magical chance you find this content to be helpful in any way, shape, or form, please click the like button, share the message, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have an Instagram account, a personal one, and one specifically for this channel that you're more than welcome to check out. I'm an open book. I have also created t-shirt designs. I'm wearing my favorite one right now, which is the North Node design, but I have that and other things that you can look at inspired by this process and journey, and I have the link in the description box as well as in the about section of my YouTube channel. So you're more than welcome to check those items out. Any type of support is great. Again, if you find this content really helpful or meaningful, sometimes when we take that step and be vulnerable, with showing what's inside our hearts and what's really our truth, we realize that we're much more connected than what we thought we were. And so I hope that as I'm living this experience and that you find some type of truth for yourself, or find some type of ability to heal in some way just by relating, just by knowing that you're not alone. That really has been my goal with this process, not just being able to connect with others, but really for my own healing. It's definitely been a therapeutic experience and a very creative one for myself. So I thank you, and I wish you all the best, and we'll see what else comes next for me. So